Fugitive of the Judoon is what I'm dubbing the trick episode of Series 12. The trick is tricking the majority of people who've seen it into thinking it's one of the greatest things ever made, due to two obvious reasons. But when you actually look at this episode critically, you realise that it has no plot, and overall, without one obvious sexy man coming back, it is a bad episode. And I'm not gonna lie, this episode tricked me. It tricked loads of people I know, and I'm not exactly proud that I fell for the spell of the sexiest man in the world returning. Because this episode is by definition fanwank reassurance. Fanwank reassurance is a measure Chris Chibnall took knowing that this series was failing due to the appalling Series 11. So he crammed this episode halfway through the series to reassure everyone. Look, guys, we have Jack, the show isn't dead. Look, guys, we have another incarnation of the Doctor, the show isn't dead. And I think the reason I was tricked by this was thinking that both these ideas would go somewhere in the finale. Spoilers, they don't. Jack is in the episode to tickle the balls of the RTD era fans like myself, and the Ruth Doctor is here for everyone who's sick of 13. And Ruth is barely in the finale, despite this episode of just pure setting her up. And Jack isn't even in the fucking finale, so this episode in the long run is ultimately pointless. But, with all that out the way, let's review Fugitive of Captain Jack Harkness. This episode begins with showing us this character Ruth and her suspicious husband Lee. I did kinda like how they subvert the expectations by revealing that he isn't evil. And it just turns out that he was the Ruth Doctor's companion, but this alone raises issues. The Ruth Doctor, unfortunately, despite all the theories that would have been better, comes before the first Doctor, William Hartnell, who, if you see the first part of The Unearthly Child, don't watch the other ones, they're shit. As we see in An Unearthly Child, the Doctor clearly doesn't like humans or travelling with others, and he only travels with his granddaughter, and he only accidentally travels with humans. Over the first Doctor's era, we see him warm to humans, getting traits from each companion that travels with him over time. So why the Ruth Doctor is travelling with one exactly, I don't know. But then again, because this episode is incredibly tightly written, we don't actually know what Lee is. There's a line later on to imply that he isn't human, but is he a Time Lord? Back to the present of the episode, it does a good job of making Ruth feel like a nice character, because everyone was just ignoring her. And this does make us feel a bit bad for her, as she seems like a nice person. After that, we meet the greatest character in cinematic history all years, Alan, who makes coffee. Not just coffee, the greatest coffee I've seen in my entire life, and okay, not gonna lie, he is kinda funny. He reinforces the idea that Lee's a freak by presenting it in a folder, which is obviously hypocritical and it leads to a funny scene. Now, obviously, because this is scored by Segan Akinola, the music ruins this scene completely. But after the atrocious soundtrack in Night of Terror, I don't know what else I expected. Luckily, the Rhino Boys show up in their usual fashion, but this segment is where things just get messy. We cut from Ruth, to the Judoon ship, to the boring TARDIS, and it's annoying. Back to back to back to back to back, and they should have just cut the Judoon ships anyway, because they just feel like filler. Wasn't I complaining about filler in the last review as well? The TARDIS scene just feels pointless as well, reminding us that the Master destroyed Gallifrey, treating the audience like children who can't remember the most important location in the universe being destroyed. AGAIN! And I'm sorry, right, but what happened to the whole Gallifrey is saved but it's lost in another dimension? 13 just hops there and back constantly with no effort required. The last time before this, the Doctor took 4.5 billion years to get there, but 13 just goes there whenever she ditches the farm. Nice. I do like how even in the TARDIS scenes 13 admits they just ask too many questions. Because if I travelled with people as annoying as them, I'd say the same, to be honest. And the Judoon cataloguing people to find the culprit was a nice callback. And I like how in this episode Chibnall casually continues his fetish of killing old women. Seriously, Spyfall Part 2 and Orphan 55. And now this! I mean, I'm not complaining because it's funny, but still, it's bizarre. The scene with Alan's cake was pretty funny as well, and seeing Lee cut off this simp was also funny. And even Graham gets in a good line about the shittiness of this cake before he teleports away. After Alan is killed in an unintentionally comedic way, we get the confrontation of the Doctor and the Judoon. And I'm not gonna lie, this scene is almost good. Ryan gets in a good line. Yaz almost has some semblance of character. And the Doctor's authority is shown decently here. And the number bit at the end was funny. And then it happens.
Don't move. Seriously, not a muscle. Trust me, they get everywhere. By the way, looking good. You can get excited now.
You missed me, right?
A few things are wrong with this scene despite it being beautiful. Number 1. This lighting is terrible. Number 2. This music is fucking shit. This is not Jack music. Number 3. This scene is genuine perfection now.
If you even flinch, it'll set off the laser spikes. Trust me, they get everywhere. You can get excited now.
You missed me, right?
We met. Still juicy. Regeneration can't change that. How you been, Doctor?
Now that's over.
Holy fucking shit, he's back. Jack fucking came back. Jack is back. Jack came back. What did I say? He came back. I'm always getting messages. Oh, Fugitive, it's so bad. It's so awful. Jack is here. I do not care about the quality if Jack is here. He is the best!
You missed me, right?
Yes!
Every single scene with Jack is obviously the best part of the episode. He has the best jokes and the funniest dialogue, and putting him in the same room as these companions is just embarrassing, as it just shows how boring they are while Jack just radiates character. But in Jack's final scene, he raises the problem with him being here. Jack is just here to make sure that people watch the finale, and this is annoying. His inclusion in this episode is utterly pointless, other than to say, "Hey guys, we'll watch the finale, please." And this, ultimately, is a waste of Jack. As I said in the intro, Jack isn't even in the finale. Chibnall just put Jack here to try and regain viewers, and it didn't even work. And do you have any idea how long we waited for Jack back? He hadn't been in Doctor Who for 10 years and 25 days by the time Fugitive aired, and Torchwood ended 9 years ago. Bringing Jack back just to promote your shitty finale and try raise viewers is a shitty thing to do. And not to mention, Jack is on screen for less than 5 minutes and doesn't even meet the Doctor. While cramming Jack in this episode is obviously the highlight of the episode and this series as a whole, in the long run it was ultimately pointless. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna love him though. It's quite sad that Jack's less than 5 minutes of screen time literally beats out everything after Twice Upon a Time. Just put Capaldi back, for fuck's sake. Look, he might have been shit throughout the majority of Series 10, but I'd take a shitty bored Capaldi over this Chibnall-era dribble any day. The Doctor then interrogates two innocent people essentially, and this scene is quite well done. Lee especially seems incredibly suspicious, and the build-up is well done here, and the dialogue is quite good. Then, after a scene of more ball-tickling with this character Gat, great name, we arrive at the cathedral with some bizarre scenes in them. The scene of Ruth kicking around the Judoon was a really double-edged sword. On one hand, the reveal of Ruth being the Fugitive was so obvious it's almost painful. Like, come on, why else would we be following her around and not Lee if he was the Fugitive? Also, the fight scene when Ruth kicks around the Judoon is so shit. It does that thing a lot of action with bad directors do where they just move around the camera so you're under the assumption the action is good when it really isn't. And the Judoon being beaten this easily just nullifies their threat level completely. And on the other hand, I guess it builds up the mystery of Ruth well, kinda. The scene with Ruth being confused on who she was is alright, I guess. But this fucking lighthouse looks terrible. Also, the Doctor being confused here doesn't work to great effect. Because 13 either always knows what's going on with no challenge, or she just annoyingly asks questions constantly. And then this is where the shit truly hits the fan. After one last scene with the sexy man telling us to watch the finale, we get the shit that I despised almost as much as Yaz or the Satcher Master. So after the Doctor stands on the tower, she for some reason decides to dig a hole. Quick note, how can 13 even make digging a hole annoying? These grunting noises she makes are so annoying and so obviously fake, like come on! You are digging a hole yet you're still fucking up. Just watch Heaven Sent, Capaldi does that shit properly. And alongside this scene we see Ruth smash a fire alarm filled with regeneration energy. I fucking hate this. First of all, who the fuck decides to store that energy in a lighthouse alarm? What's wrong with just the fob watch, for fuck's sake? What if the place was just on fire and some random farmer just fucking gets regeneration energy? Also, why is the thing calling to her? In the Blood two-parter, there was a perception filter on the watch so John Smith couldn't even look at it. It wasn't calling to him. And on top of that, the regeneration effect looks fucking awful. Why is it that after the end of time, the regeneration effect slowly started getting worse over time until we get this awful shit? Alongside this, 13 digs up plot hole number 2. Why does the TARDIS look like a police box? It's a pretty well-known fact that the chameleon circuit broke in 60s London and that's why it looks like a police box. So why does this pre-Hartnell incarnation have a police box, for fuck's sake? This is such an easy thing to fix. Just have it be a TARDIS cylinder. It's that simple, but you still manage to fuck it up, you simpletons. Anyways, yeah, I hate this incarnation of the Doctor, and I honestly hope she's revealed to be a dark manifestation or something. I hope the same for this Master as well. I don't see what people say in her. She's just a nothing Doctor. I honestly prefer Jodie to her, and Jodie is, well, was my least favourite Doctor. The only thing I even come close to liking about Ruth is where she basically just insults 13. Because it was funny, but not for the reasons intended. Also, the two speaking in unison was beyond annoying. This was done better in the two Doctors, but it's done with purpose and to comedic effect. And let's be honest, Ruth's sarcasm just shows that she's a poor man's Pertwee. In this ship-place thing with the Judoon and Gat, I actually have to give credit to Jodie for once, as her performance is quite good, for a nice change. Her outburst is good even though weak compared to her predecessors, and she outsmartens the other two, and I like it. However, after that we are shown the other massive issue with this episode. Yeah, I know, there's too many to fucking count at this point. It is revealed that Ruth would have had to be a Doctor in the past, and this episode leaves that concept open for the finale. And if you've seen the finale, you know it doesn't. This is the worst sort of episode, the episode that rely on the finale to be good. And Timeless not only makes this episode retroactively pointless, but it makes every single episode of Doctor Who ever made worse. So this scene of the two talking is just pointless. Jodie's acting is once again good here, as we see her confused and bewildered and she genuinely looks distraught. And the scene in the TARDIS isn't the worst thing ever, with the fam talking about who the Doctor is and the dialogue between them is good. But like most scenes, the shitty music ruins this scene, making it feel so cheesy and pandering to an annoying degree. Also, this episode leads into Praxeus, which is one of the worst things I've seen in my life. So that was Fugitive of the Captain Jack Harkness cameo, and I've got to say, this episode was really bad. While there's a few decent jokes and lines in this episode, there's so much wrong with it. The bad outweighs the good here. First off, this episode is so clearly Chibnall's desperate attempt to keep the viewers interested. With the RTD era pandering crammed to the max here, forcing in the Judoon, bringing back Jack after 10 years to use him for less than 5 minutes, introducing the worst Doctor in existence and promising the finale will do something with her, and then the finale doesn't do anything with her, making this episode just a waste of time. On top of that, this episode has awful effects, ugly cinematography, mostly bad directing, no plot, an anticlimactic ending as it basically just tells us what's the finale, wastes the Judoon, wastes Jack, and ultimately is a worthless experience. Unless you want to watch Jack's scenes, never watch this. It's not even like Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror, where I can at least say that Tesla carried the whole episode. Because the second Jack leaves this episode, it just dives into the pits of hell of quality, just becoming cock-teasing for the finale, which, if I haven't made clear enough, is the worst thing ever made by humans. Up next is probably the most worthless episode of Doctor Who ever written.
Don't forget to click below and subscribe to the official TARDIS Team YouTube channel.